Alice is a solicitor in Southampton. Some of you may recognise her from when we were both Miss England finalists. So, if you want to just introduce yourself a bit, you don't
Yeah.
have to.
No, that's all right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, my name is Alice. I'm 27 years old, and in my day job, I'm actually a commercial property solicitor. So, I'm here today to talk a little bit about the impact of dyslexia within my profession. Should be an interesting discussion.
So, can you tell me how your responsibilities involve making sure that your clients understand the advice or legal implications?
Absolutely. So, it's the absolute fundamental baseline obligation we have as lawyers. So, as lawyers, we have two types of law. So, there's the first law that comes from the statutes, so the acts that the parliament writes, and then you have the second type of law which comes from common law, so it comes from cases and the decisions that the judges have made over time. So to a normal person they wouldn't have a clue, so they come to us with problems and they say, this is my problem, tell me how to solve the problem. And in order to solve that problem, obviously we need to look at the law and the case law to see what solutions there are. So specifically, I do commercial property work. So I act for clients primarily when they're buying or selling property. So actually, my work is mainly transactional. So they say, I want to buy this derelict office building and I want to turn it into houses. And we go, okay, let's make that happen. So the client's understanding the law is the fundamental basis of my job. I'm basically a translator from, what the law says into how can I solve your problem. I'm a glorified translator, basically.
So that
So
people can actually understand it.
yeah, exactly. And it takes you 6 years of training to get here. So it took me 6 years to become a qualified solicitor. And I've been qualified for about 2 years now. So I've been doing this for about 8 years, which is crazy. So clients understanding the law, and that is, my absolute fundamental responsibility. So being able to translate that into client specific advice that they understand is really important. And that's where that balance comes in of, getting to know your clients, getting to know what type of medium works for them. So for example, when I'm doing due diligence on a property, so they come to me and they say, I want to buy this bit of land. We go away and we look at all the title documents, we do all the searches, we really look into that land, see if there's anything they're allowed to do, anything they're not allowed to do. So sometimes clients will prefer it if we put that in a written report for them, so they can take that away, look at it in their own time, and come back to us. And other clients will ring me and go, "Tell me what the problems are." So yeah, being able to translate that to clients is the fundamental baseline of my responsibility.
Yeah. So, would you say it's vital that clients have a good understanding rather than simply relying on just a solicitor's advice?
Absolutely. So a lot of the time when I'm dealing with a sale or a purchase, the clients need to know what the issues are and how that affects their plans. So a lot of the time they will try and be a bit cheeky and they will try and rely on us directly and say, you tell me if it's okay to buy. And I say, I can't tell you if it's okay to buy. What I can say is, here's everything we found out about it, and it's up to you to make the decision. Because as solicitors and as a law firm, we have something called indemnity insurance, which basically means if we make a mistake, they can sue us. And we have insurers that specifically cover that. So we'll then go to our indemnity insurer and go, a client's claiming that we made a mistake, can you help out? And then that will then be resolved with our insurers. But ultimately, the clients need to make the decisions themselves. So what we'll say is, we will advise them. So we'll say, we found this, this is the potential implications. You have to take a view on it. So tell us yes or no. So the ultimate decision making power remains with the client. And
So
I think
it's
that's
so
really important.
it's so important, like what you've then told them, what you've found is clear so that they actually understand it because they're making their decision based off that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super, super important. And like I said, making sure that that slightly legal language is easy to understand for them so they know what that means in normal people language.
Yeah. So, how difficult is it when you have a client who has literacy issues or difficulties in reading?
So I thought this was a really interesting question when I saw it, actually, because I don't think I've ever had a client who will come to me overtly and say, I have an issue with reading or writing or sort of literary issues. I don't think I've ever had that situation before. But when I was thinking about it, what I did notice was I have clients who ask me to report in certain ways. So some clients, like I said, will take these reports, they'll take them away, they'll read them in their own time, and they will come back with questions on them, which is great, works for them. We have other clients who want us to produce a much shorter summary, and that will usually be color coded. So we'll have red things, which are, this may stop the deal, you need to look at this now. We have yellow, which is, you should be aware it might have implications, but actually it's probably not going to kill your deal. And then green, which is, okay, you need to be aware of this, but don't worry about it too much, but we need to make you aware. So we have some clients that prefer that much shorter form. And then we have clients who would much rather get on the phone with you, and they would say, right, run me through the issues on the phone. So I don't think I've ever come across a client that's overtly said to me, I have issues reading. But reading between the lines, I think actually they make it clear in other ways by saying, can I have that assistance, but can I have it over the phone? Or even in person, can I come and sit in and actually do it? So I think for them, quite a lot of the time, it may be a pride thing, it might be a reputational thing. But I think reading between the lines, you can identify how they work and how best they need to receive that advice. And, you can amend your reports and your style to really reflect that.
Yeah, because obviously having a phone call and seeing someone actually in person and them explaining it in front of them is different to them being just sent an email with like, oh, this is all the information, and then like looking at it going, like, yeah.
I've seen emails before where you'll have sort of 25 bullet points. So another colleague sent an email out to the client, 25 bullet points, and I see that, I'm like, I'm getting an angry phone call this morning. So
yeah. How concerning is it that there may be a large proportion of the population who, for whatever reason, don't disclose that they have dyslexia or struggle to read? So I suppose that actually just links to what you've just said.
It does. It links in really nicely, actually, because for us as advisors, we really need to know how best to advise and how best we can help. And it sometimes is quite alarming, when people don't tell us that they have these issues, and then you can tell that they've not read the reports. So I had one recently where a client came back to me and said, did we really agree that when we bought the site? And I was like, yes, did you not read any of the documents that we sent you? And a lot of the time, they may well have just forgotten. But some clients are very guilty of not reading the reports. And whether that's because, they struggle with reading the reports, it's not in a style that is easy for them to navigate, maybe because they do have sort of literacy difficulties. But when they don't tell you, you can't know these things. So I think it is almost that exercise of reading between the lines and getting to know your clients, getting to know how they like to work. But yeah, it can be really concerning, especially when we can get sued, especially when there's that implication on us there that if they don't read the advice and then they come back to us and say, oh, well, you didn't tell me this, it's really important that we were able to refer back to the reports and say, yes, we did. But whether there's something underlying there in terms of their ability to read the report or, digest its content, especially at the end of the transaction when it's really time pressured. So what we tend to do as well is try and send first drafts as early as we can, so people have more time to sit and read them and digest them and raise any questions, because that does really help as well. There's all these little things you can do. And as you work with clients, being a solicitor is a people business. I'm a person and all our clients are people. So you get to know them. And I think as you get to know them, you can really start to tailor what you're doing.
Understand, yeah. So does the Law Society have any guidance for solicitors like yourself on how to support dyslexic clients or those with poor literacy skills? Have you came across that?
So it's very interesting because I had a look earlier on today and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find any guidance in terms of dealing with people and clients who have sort of literacy difficulties. What I did find was advice for solicitors when dealing with people in a more general sense, but also advice on other specific situations, such as, if we suspect that someone might be unduly influenced. So if, say, an old lady is selling a property and we suspect that maybe there might be some people there influencing her to try and get her to sell it, there's a lot of guidance on that. But actually, when I was looking, there's quite a lot of discussion on the forums and sort of Law Society articles about solicitors who have gone through the process of qualification and done the exams and are dealing with their own dyslexia in sort of the day-to-day life in their career. But actually, there's no general advice that I could find on a quick scan of advice for dealing with clients with this dyslexia. And I think that mainly stems from the point about disclosure, which we were talking about earlier, and that, it's very like I've not come across it. I wonder if my boss has come across it. Actually, I might ask him tomorrow. It's quite uncommon for people to come to you and say, I do struggle. Can you help me out in this way? So no, I couldn't see any guidance at all, actually.
So, would you like to see more support and guidance for solicitors with supporting them clients then?
Absolutely. I think the issue with there being so many different solicitors, we're all individual people. We like to do things in our own individual ways. And like I said, we don't always do things in the same way, and people aren't always as in tune to client needs as other people. So like I used the example earlier with, I'd seen a colleague sending an email to a client, just like 25 bullet points. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get an angry phone call. That's not how they like to do it. Where there's so much differentiation in how different people deal with other people, I think I would love to see some sort of standardization, some general guidance, some, try and do it this way and try and do it this way. And, our report should be, try and stick to these headline reports and then a more detailed report, and see if we can go fishing for information. If a client says to us, actually, can you run through it over the phone? Maybe challenging that and saying, is there anything I should be aware of in terms of these reports? Because as you know, we're obligated to send you a report, but is there anything I can do to make it easier, to digest? I know you like running through things over the phone. Exactly. So yeah, I would absolutely love to see more guidance and more support. It's beneficial for us as solicitors, but also clients as well.
Yeah. So, would it be helpful if society generally had a greater understanding of dyslexia and how not appreciating and understanding legal advice could have a significant impact on someone or anyone's circumstances?
Absolutely. So going with the flow when you're getting legal advice, if you don't understand it, it's not going to work. So many people do this, they'll go and get legal advice and they won't have a clue, but they will rely on the solicitors. But the solicitor a lot of the time won't realize they don't have a clue. So it almost takes a bit of a knack to realize when maybe your client's not getting it, but they don't want to tell you. And you can kind of tell because their intonation will change and the way they're speaking might change. They might pause and you'll be like, okay, I think you're not quite getting it here, because they'll also generally be too embarrassed to ask. But I think the impact on dyslexia on a really literacy heavy career and, professions such as being a solicitor, it's really profound. We don't talk about it enough. I don't know.
As a solicitor and in law, you have so much content to read through and learn.
Yeah.
It does rely on being able to read it and understand.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time reading it quickly and being able to process it and digest it. So for example, I had a meeting the other day where I got the documents 15 minutes before the meeting, had to read and understand those documents and then go into the meeting. So a lot of the time it takes really quick processing time, and that is not set up for people who need longer processing time. I think, more generally as well. So for example, my brother has dyslexia, I'm sure he won't mind me saying. And I don't know how that impacts his life. Yeah. We just don't talk about it. And it's something we should speak about. Obviously I'm not giving him legal documents every 5 minutes or reports, so it's not as bad. But, it would be really great to understand how that impacts his life. I think it can impact things such as organization skills, time management, which when he's late to my house makes a lot of sense. But also just generally, if there's anything I could do to support him or anything like that. I think it's something in society that's like, oh yeah, you're dyslexic. Oh, cool. People don't really go further than that.
It's sort of just brushed off, but it's like I feel like people need to actually understand how it impacts people's lives, just like anything else.
Absolutely, because it does massively, especially in educational settings and in careers that might be slightly more, English word language reading focused. Like that's really important. It can have a really profound impact on not only the career opportunities for people, but how they feel about themselves. If they're really struggling with that and actually the people around them don't seem to understand why that's a problem. It's like, oh, you're dyslexic, but you can still read, right? Like it's like, yes, but it just takes me longer to process. And, I need the time to fully understand it and I need help with XYZ. I feel like we could all be a much more compassionate society if there was a much wider understanding of it.
Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting to see it from like a different point of view because obviously yourself you don't have dyslexia, but it's
Yeah,
interesting to see how in your career and in your job like how dyslexia sort of impacts it, and not necessarily like you said that you've not ever met a client that's got it, but
yeah.
that you can kind of pick up on things, and it's just kind of like that we need more people like you that are willing to sit there and be like, well, I can explain it in a different way if it makes it
Yeah,
easier. When it comes to things such as like law and documents, it's so important.
absolutely. Understanding it is the most important thing. And if there's anything that we need to do ultimately to help our clients and to help them understand it, getting legal advice doesn't tend to happen, unless you're buying a house, which is great, but it is stressful. Generally, when you're getting legal advice, it's a really stressful time in life. And actually, being able to make that process easier and for people to understand that is really important. But I think as well, as I've been looking into it, I've realized the challenges and the barriers that people face coming into the legal profession if they've got dyslexia themselves as well. Like I said, there's a lot of Law Society articles about people that have overcome dyslexia to go on and have really incredible legal careers. But it is a barrier, when we've got all these exams 6 years before qualification. I think my exams at university were 4 hours long, and that was without any extra time, and it was awful. So there's
Yeah.
more that can be done, not only for clients, but for improving access to the profession as well. And I think that's really important. So it's a great profession. So
Well, thank you so much for this interview. That's been really great, and it's so
no
nice to
worries.
see you.
So good to see you too. Right, let me turn this recording off.